Thank you. First of all, let me say that I'm very happy to be at this Institute of Nuclear Theory Physics for the second time. And I enjoyed it very much because I like this format where we can learn from different fields and discuss with almost everyone in the room. So I enjoy it. I learned a lot over the last 3 days and hope to learn a lot in the next days as well. So I will not speak about turbulence, sorry. So I don't know why I got invited. I'm here, so I will tell you what we have done. And actually, we have a little bit of onset of dissipation.
That's exactly why.
In this system, which is essentially a mixture of two types of superfluid, one of bosonic nature, Bose-Einstein condensates, this is dilute gases, and one of a fermionic character, governed by essentially BCS pairing that we can tune, as Martin explained yesterday, between the Bose-Einstein condensation limit, where we have a strongly bound pairs, where we can use Gross-Pitevsky equation, to unitary regime, where the physics is much more complex and hard to describe theoretically, or BCS regime, where again in the mean field limit, the theory is well understood. And what we have done, actually, we have produced the first mixture of these two types of superfluids. So let me say that both superfluids have been produced 25 years ago by mixing, for instance, at Gila, rubidium atoms into hyperfine states, and you have beautiful physics, and you have also the spin-off physics. So all this is, or spin-spin interactions, and spin-off condensate. So this was done with both systems. But I would like to show you in this presentation briefly that actually, when you mix a Bose-Einstein condensate and a Fermi superfluid, we had some surprises. One of them dealing with the critical velocity for superfluid counterflow, and some others which are not so important, but still that we can understand and by simple means. And so here you see essentially in situ images of Bose-Einstein condensate, and these are lithium atoms, doesn't matter much, but lithium isotopes. We have lithium-7, which is the VC in this image, and lithium-6 in two spin states. So it's a spin-1 system, spin-up, spin-down with strong attraction. Both of them are in the superfluid state, and we make them oscillate. This is simply the dipole mode into a trap, similar to Gabriele's in the previous talk, elongated trap. We excite the dipole mode, and we see oscillations, and these oscillations I'm going to show you last for a very long time, up to 10 seconds, without any sign of dampings in the system, even though at some places you see this one goes up and this one goes down, so they have a counterflow in this system. So let me first introduce my group in Paris, and stress the people who have done most of the work, and so I would like to mention Frédéric Chevy, who is professor at École Normale, Mathieu Pierce, who is here, and Tariq Yefsa, who is also our young CNRS recruitment, who's come from Martin's group, actually, as well as Julian Struck, who is leading an effort towards one-dimensional Fermi gas in tubes, essentially, with the potassium atoms and potassium-lithium mixtures. And also we enjoyed support of theory from many people, Yvan Castin locally in our group, Félix Werner, also Xavier Lerona, Sandro Strengari in Trento, Alessio Recati, and some others on other projects. So this is our group. And in this presentation, I will describe a few things. First of all, give you the recipe to produce both Fermi superfluid with these isotopes. And then show you that when we measure the center of mass modes, actually we get access to the equation of states of the strongly interacting Fermi gas. So we can make precision measurement of the frequency, and the systems of lithium-6 and lithium-7 are coupled. And in this coupling, you have interesting information, which I will show how we can link it to the equation of states. And then we measure the critical velocity for this superfluid counterflow that I hinted to before. And then another funny effect that we have seen, a surprise, was that when we increase slightly the temperature above the lowest temperature that we can make, which are typically 5% of the Fermi temperature, we see some phase locking of the Bose-Fermi oscillation. The bosons are dragged by the fermions, even though both of them are in the normal phase, but the Fermi gas is strongly interacting, and the Bose gas is weakly interacting, and they have weak coupling, And so we were a bit surprised to see this phase locking of the Bose-Fermi oscillations. And finally, but this is a bit more for the specialist in the room, we can understand from very simple arguments the lifetime of the Bose-Fermi system with a very simple formula which relates this lifetime because our gases are metastable. So three-body interaction can lead to losses. And actually, these three-body losses are actually a very nice tool for the quantum correlation in the strongly interacting Fermi gas. And this is the reason why this lifetime is connected to a fundamental parameter in strongly interacting Fermi gas, which is called the TAN parameter, Shina-TAN contact parameter. And with a very simple formula, we can describe the lifetime of the Bose-Fermi mixture in the limit where the Bose-Fermi interaction is weak. And I explained this. And here is a list of the papers that we published on these topics. So, as you all know, we have these two families of superfluid, Bose-Einstein condensate, helium-4, 2 Kelvin, dilute gases is 25 years, and the Fermi family, starting with normal supraconductors, but also high-temperature supraconductors. And let me just remind that, as beautifully shown previously in this week, you have superfluidity in helium-3, but at much lower temperature than in helium-4. And thanks to Martin's work at MIT, we can show that the dilute gases, like this one or this one, actually also can be wrote in the nicely illustrated by this Abrikosov lattice, where you have a lattice of nodal lines for a system in rotation where all the vortices have the same helicity and the quantization. It has been shown that the circulation of the field around each of these vortex lines is quantized in units of h over m, as explained before. And so what I will show you is that what are the kind of novel properties when we mix these two types of quantum gases. And so you will tell me, yes, but look, helium exists since much longer, and why people have not seen double superfluidity in helium. So if you take helium-4, it's superfluid. If you take helium-3 on its own, it's also superfluid. But when you mix them, nature is not so nice. You have phase separation. So here is a concentration of helium-3 immersed into helium-4 as a function of temperature. It's a phase diagram. But you see when you exceed 6% here, the two gases phase separate. So to study mixture, this is not so good. It has a very nice practical application. This is how you move into this phase diagram. This is how you cryocooler. You can cool much lower than a few millikelvin. But for studying mixtures of superfluid, this is not good. And a few years after the discovery of helium-3 superfluidity, the group of Volovic and Kalatnikov has calculated what would be the properties of a mixture of a Bose superfluid with a Fermi superfluid. And they developed the Fermi liquid theory of mixture with several sounds as early as 1975. And so the difficulty here is that the density of helium-3 in the helium-4 is very low, and the expected critical temperature is in the range of a few microkelvin. So despite efforts, especially in Aalto, in Finland, this has not been produced yet in helium mixtures. But with the quantum gases, we have many nodes, actually. So we can avoid this unstable composition, phase separation. And we use, as I said before, lithium-7 boson, so this is Bose-Einstein condensate with an in-situ image, thermal pedestal, just to show the thermometry, and also the Fermi C here of lithium-6 fermions that we will put into spin state. And of course, this is a picture of Enrico Fermi, Pauli, and Fermi statistics. And so our first superfluid will be this strongly interacting Fermi gas that Martin nicely introduced yesterday. So let me just recall very briefly and also mention the name of David Jean, who was a pioneer but who passed away 2 years ago, way too early, and who showed indeed for the first time with also the group in his book of Rudi Grimm that you can, if you take fermions with spin up and spin down, you can produce a Fermi superfluid near resonance. And so on the BCS regime, you have attraction, but weak attraction. The scattering length A is small, and so this parameter is small. You can apply mean field, the Bogoliubov de Gennes, and whatever, and you get pairing on the Fermi surface, where you have plus K minus K Doppler pairs, which are well localized in momentum space at the surface of the Fermi sphere, but totally delocalized in position space. So when you increase the magnitude of A, you reach the on-resonance regime, which is very interesting because NA cube is much greater than 1. The gas is strongly correlated, and this is hard to tackle theoretically. And at unitarity, exactly when A is infinite, and I showed you what infinite means a bit later, you have universal thermodynamics because the scattering length drops out of the problem. And so many parameters of this unitary gas are just governed by numbers, that you can relate to ideal Fermi gas, but with modified property. And it's hard to compute in this regime. And when you increase the attraction, furthermore, you have a molecular branch, a lower energy branch, with an energy h bar squared divided by ma squared. And then you end up with molecules with size much less than interparticle distance. And then the physics becomes that of a weakly interacting Bose-Einstein condensate that you can describe by Gross-Vitebsk equation. So this will be our first Fermi superfluid with these two spin states, spin up and spin down, with tunable attractive interaction. And these are done in the range of 800 Gauss with these two lowest states. This is the hyperfine energy of lithium-6. Here, this will be our first superfluid. And for lithium-7, we'll take not the lowest state, but the next to lowest state, because in this state, the scattering length in lithium-7 is positive, which is not the case in the lower state. And for making a stable Bose-Einstein condensate, you want to have a positive scattering length. So the recipe is quite simple. What are the requirements? You want to have a small Bose-Fermi scattering length to avoid demixing, like it occurs in helium. And so I show you where we can operate for this. You want high magnitude for the Fermi-Fermi interaction, AF, high AF, so that the temperature for superfluid regime TC is high. And Martin mentioned yesterday that this was 17% of the Fermi temperature, so very high in units of the Fermi temperature. And you want positive Bose-Bose scattering length so that the BC is stable. And so when you look around 800 Gauss, you have phase-back resonance both in lithium-6, which is a red curve here. Note it's divided by 100. So actually, on the real scale, this resonance would be almost outside of the graph. And in blue, these are the phase-back resonance of lithium-7 in the state I was mentioning, the state 2 for bosons, and 1 fermions, 2 fermions in red. And also on this graph, you have the dashed line, which is the Bose-Fermi scattering length, which is small and positive. So demixing will not occur in this situation. And so you can hope to produce a mixture of superfluid outside of this forbidden region, which correspond to negative scattering length for the bosons. But anywhere elsewhere here, you can hope to make a unitary Fermi gas mix with a standard Bose-Einstein condensate with a scattering length of about 80 Bohr radius. Here you can be on the BCS side for the fermions and have a standard positive scattering length bosons. Or you can go towards the mixture of two BECs, essentially when you move on this branch, not too far, but on this side, where you will have a BEC of dimers mixed with a Bose-Einstein condensate of lithium-7. So you can explore quite a wide range of properties in this system. A few words about the experiment, which is a kind of standard quantum gas experiment. We start with a magneto-optical trap. We move them into this little appendix here. Actually, this was designed by Gabriele. Huh? Where is Gabriele? Oh, he's no, yeah. Gabriele Ferrari, this was part of his PhD 18 years ago, something like this. And so we load our atoms into an optical dipole trap, a strongly focused beam. And here we use two magnetic coils to produce the axial trapping. And those coils are important because magnetic potentials are very smooth. And so for the dipole mode excitation that I will show you later, this turns out to be very important, that we have very harmonic trapping along the axis of the optical dipole. So we load the atoms, we cool, and in 4 seconds, we get the gas to 50 nano K, where you expect both of them to be to be superfluid. And then we do in situ imaging or after time of flight, but in what I'm going to discuss, mostly in situ imaging. So we send, here is our big gas, elongated along this direction, and we make an absorption image, and we measure the optical density, as Gabriel explained before, and we make an image on the CCD camera of the profile, spin up, spin down, or the bosons, whenever we want to measure the property. And so this is half of the profile along this axis. We sum up all the lines on the CCD camera. We get the unitary Fermi gas here with these red points and the condensate of lithium-7 here. And we see no thermal fraction, no thermal pedestal at this lowest trap depth, which from this we infer that the condensed fraction and 0 over NB total is in excess of 75 to 80%. And from this, we get an upper bound for the temperature, which is 18 nanokelvin. And when we plug this temperature into the lithium-6 Fermi gas, we find that it should be the critical temperature divided by 2 for the Fermi. So on this image, you say, okay, they should be in the superfluid regime, but you have no direct proof. And so I will show you how we can go prove more directly what is happening, and in particular by studying the dipole mode and the counterflow in the system. And the good news is that the lifetime of this mixture is very long, typically 7 seconds, even in the shallow trap. So it's mostly dominated by residual evaporations, perhaps a little heating. And so we can do a lot of measurements in 7 seconds with these quantum gases. And actually, this unitary Fermi gas is an excellent coolant because scattering cross-section for the spin-up, spin-down at unitarity is very large, is unitarily limited, as I should say. And therefore, this gas cools lithium-7 here very efficiently. We go from 40 microkelvin to 50 nanoK, and we lose a factor 2 or 3 in lithium-7 atoms because this lithium-6 gas is very cold, just like a cold stone at the bottom of the trap, and a few collisions for the bosons just cools the bosons to very low temperature. And so this is what I'm saying here. And I should mention here that this kind of cooling of mixture of strongly interacting fermions with Bose-Einstein condensate was done also in China at USTC by Yao Chen. And here at the University of Washington by and colleagues, and with an interesting mixture where we have very strong mass difference, ytterbium 173 and lithium-6. So this lithium-6 coolant is very efficient. And so let me now show you what happens when you record the center of mass oscillation. You see that it oscillates for quite a few periods. Actually, it goes 10 times out of this screen. So then you can measure precisely the frequency of these oscillations, and so I call tilde the frequencies when they are together in the trap, and without tilde when only one of the two species are in the trap. And so you see that we see a shift of the frequency when they are in the same trap, 15.6 instead of 15.4. So it's 1.5% shift in the frequency for lithium-7. For lithium-6, there is a small shift, but it's just within the error bar of our measurements. And also, you can check that in this system, the ratio of the frequencies is simply given by the ratio of the mass, 7,6, lithium-7 and lithium-6, M7 divided by M6 at the power 1/2. And so what I'm going to show you now is that this frequency difference is related to the equation of state of the gas. So let's look at a longer picture, 4 seconds now. We see many oscillations at bottom Fermi superfluid, on top the Bose-Einstein condensate. And we see also an interesting modulation of this amplitude. You see here. So you can view this as harmonic oscillators. And so you see that there is coherent energy exchange between one harmonic oscillator and the other one. Because, as you remember, the harmonic oscillator energy is proportional to the square of this amplitude. So here we have less energy in the Bose gas. This energy should go in the Fermi gas. So we'll ask me, but I don't see it going to the Fermi gas. But in the Fermi gas, we have 10 to 20 times more atoms. So momentum conservation means that I should see, if I see 20% modulation here, I should see 2% modulation here, which is perhaps slightly the case here, but it's within the noise. Nevertheless, we see that some period later here, the amplitude goes back up, and this lasts forever. So we have a modulation of the amplitude by about 20 to 30%, depending on the parameter. We show that we have coherent energy exchange between these two superfluids, actually, as I'm going to show you later. So how do we understand this? We can do a simple mean field model, and let me show you this simple equation. Let's ask, what is the modification of the trapping potential for the bosons in presence of the fermions? So the trapping potential for the bosons in this limit of weak interaction and small number of bosons, N7, much less than N6, for simplicity. So I have this coupling, and the Bose-Fermi coupling, given by the scattering length here. And so this is the external trapping potential V of R plus GBF density N6 over R. Now I use a local density approximation, which I used several times before, that I write the density of the fermions at position R is the density of the fermions at the center of the trap with a chemical potential μ6 at the center of the trap, shifted by the trapping potential. So this is the expression of the local density approximation, which says that the physics at position R is the same as the physics at the same temperature, is the same as the physics at the center, but where I have just moved up the chemical potential by the external trapping potential. Actually, it's a very good approximation for the strongly interacting Fermi gas. And N6 of nu is nothing but an equation of state of the gas. And so we will take the equation of state of the stationary Fermi gas because our oscillations are very small. And this is it. When I have this equation of state, I can linearize this equation of state near μ6 0 by noting that the condensate actually is a small little bulb actually at the center of the big Fermi C. And so the extension of the potential that is seen by the Bose-Einstein condensate is much less than the chemical potential of the fermions at center, μ6 0. So this quantity is very small compared to that quantity, so I can do Taylor expansion. N6 of R is N6 at the center of the trap for chemical potential μ6 0 minus V dN over dU. And so here you see that the compressibility actually of the fermions enter into this equation, and therefore you find in a couple of lines that the frequency of the, and plugging into the previous equation, I get that the potential remains harmonic, V of R, but it's shifted by 1 minus GBF dN over dU, and taken for simplicity at the center of the trap here for very small explosion of the lithium-6 cloud. And so the frequency is shifted by this factor. And so you can use this as a frequency measurement of the equation of state, because N of mu is an equation of state. So you can access the properties of the equation of state with this. So it's a new means, essentially, to access the properties of the equation of state of the strongly interacting Fermi gas. And so I don't give you detail, but when you apply this formula, we find an excellent agreement with the measured value. And we do this in the crossover, actually. So here is 1 over KFA in the crossover regime. Unitarity is right here. And here is a shift normalized, to get a normalized unit of KFA-BF. And so we find from the frequency measurement, we find this red with some error bars here. And the expected frequency shift from the equation of state that we measured in 2010 in the crossover at low temperature is a blue curve with no adjustable parameter. So you see there is quite good agreement, and the MIT point at unitarity is right here. So very compatible with what we measure in the simplicity of our model. So this is the first information that we get from this coupling. And the second information is what happens when we have this superfluid counterflow, when we increase the initial displacement. So this will increase the relative velocity when they are out of phase. And when this relative velocity gets too large, I hope I will see a breakdown of the superfluidity. I will produce excitation in the system. And so this is what we see on this graph. So we increase now the displacement. So remember, at t equals 0, the two clouds are prepared on the side, and they start to oscillate. So if they were to oscillate with exactly the same period, you would have never counterflow, right? But they have different mass, as I said before, and therefore at some position they are out of phase. Therefore, at some positions, at some time after the start of the oscillation, they develop a counterflow, And we see indeed some initial damping. And the strange thing is that after this initial damping, then the oscillation continue for a very long time. This is 3 seconds. So what has happened is that initially we produce quasi-particle in the Bose gas, in the Fermi gas, and then this dumps this oscillation. But there is a little bit of residual evaporation. The system is not conservative, so we have a little bit of loss, mostly on the Fermi gas. And then the amplitude of the oscillation is back to the regime where it's below the critical velocity, and therefore the system now has no damping. So we feed this decay by an exponential. Of course, the system is complex, so we make some sort of average over all this period by this simple law. The amplitude d equals d naught, exponential minus gamma t, and we will get out a damping coefficient, 3 seconds minus 1 in this case, plus d prime, which is the amplitude here. And of course, I've neglected in this formula the little amplitude, but actually the true formula for the fit has also this coherent exchange that I've shown before. So then you vary the amplitude of the initial amplitude here, and that will vary the counterflow velocity, and you plot it. You plot this gamma parameter as a function of what I call here the max velocity. So when they are coming across each other at the max speed, and I normalize this by one of the characteristic velocity, which is simply the Fermi velocity in the Fermi gas. I could have normalized it to the speed of sound in the Bose gas or whatever, and I come back to that in 1 minute. But here, this is the scale. And so I see that for small velocities on this graph, I see essentially no damping within our error bars. So it's compatible with 20 seconds minus 1, something like this. And when I increase this initial amplitude, I see some relatively sharp onset of dissipation here, which means that I produce excitations in the soup, and we don't know what type of excitation for the moment. It will be very interesting to explore further, but we produce excitations. And then you say, okay, to what should I compare this quantity? And we were surprised because this is 2 centimeters per second, and when you compute the speed of sound in the Bose gas, this is way below, and the speed of sound in the Fermi gas is very close to this value, so we are slightly above the speed of sound in the Fermi gas, and much above the speed of sound in the Bose gas. So I will not rederive the Landau criterion for you because you know it by heart in this audience. Just let me tell you that I assume that I have an infinite superfluid